Hey guys, this is Rick coming at you with Weed to No Basis, the podcast for all things cannabis business related. Are you an entrepreneur? Have something you wanted to create, something you wanted to bring to life in the cannabis industry? Maybe you've always wanted to partake in one of the biggest industries in modern day history. This is the podcast to listen to. Hey guys, this is Rick, and this is episode 1 of the podcast even your mom's gonna listen to, and that's Weed to No Basis. Yeah, it is a play on words. You know, there's always this need to know basis. And the fact is that we're in a very interesting time. Like right now in 2019, as you're listening to this or watching this, everybody wants to get into the green rush. And the fact is, what we're going to do, one of the goals of this podcast is to really dispel it, is to make it simple, to break it down in such a way that even your mom can get it. Like seriously. And that's why we call it Weed to No Basis, because it's not for everybody. This is for people who really have an interest maybe in the business of cannabis, maybe have had a desire to dip their entrepreneurial toe into the industry. Maybe you're not quite ready or you're not an entrepreneur yet. And Weed to No Basis is going to be your source for learning, for growing, and to really build and sustain a responsible and ethical cannabis business. And honestly, guys, it could just be a place that where you can come and learn and share this stuff if you're in the industry today. So before we go on, you're probably wondering, who the hell is this guy and why should I pay attention? So I'm going to give you a quick, and I'm like literally in my office, just so you know. So this is where I work, I live, I play. This is my literal office. Nothing is staged here. The photos back here are actually of my family. But the question is, why should you pay attention to me? And when there's so many folks that are emerging, if you will, and they're clamoring for your attention. So besides the boyishly, ruggishly handsome good looks and the t-shirt, I'm kidding, but I'm not, is why should you listen to me? So let me give you a quick snapshot intro, guys. My name is Rick Martinez, and we're here in San Antonio, Texas, of all places where cannabis should not be a popular thing. And I'm going to share about the reasons why it is explosive here in Texas later. My name is Rick. My background, guys, is I'm a registered nurse. I've been a nurse since the mid-90s. Like 1995, actually, is when I finished nursing school. Got a 4-year degree, so I have a BSN. And the reason why that's relevant is because I have a very strong and staunch Western medicine healthcare background. And I'm going to tell you why that's relevant to this counterculture industry. But registered nurse since 95, so you can do the math. I have not practiced in over a decade, and here's the reason why. Because about 2001, I was bit by that entrepreneurial bug. And simply put, what that means is we launched our very first company. And I'm going to say this one time and then just let it go, is that I'm not going to say things to impress you, just to impress upon you the fact that this is as real, as truthful, as raw, as transparent as it gets. Nothing to hide, guys, nothing to sell here, but bit by the entrepreneurial bug in 2001. And so what does that mean? That means that as a registered nurse, guys, I was in a job that I loved, taking care of people at their best, at their worst, seeing people leave the earth and enter the earth, a tremendously gratifying career. But I knew there had to be more. I knew there had to be more. Maybe on some levels, you know what that feels like. I knew there had to be more. So I started doing contract work. In other words, picking up shifts, traveling, things like that. And so my salary went up. I was making more per hour. But what I realized is that I was always going to be capped by the number of hours I could work and by the amount of money that would be paid to me. Make sense? Now, some people might call that a job, and there's nothing wrong with that, guys, but I just knew that there was something more. So we started a company, and the fast forward is we became one of the largest federal contracting companies in the country. Now, it didn't happen overnight. It took about 10 years. 10 years of a lot of hustle, a lot of grind, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. You name it, guys. The grind and hustle is real. And I say we because my wife and I, over 10 years to really grow that thing. We ended up with 600 employees. We had offices in 19 states. We served the federal government. But along that path, a few things happened. And this is my experience, y'all. The fact is, you guys also have an experience. You have your story. And that's really what this is about. So I was bit by that entrepreneurial bug. In the time that our company was growing, I was activated by the Army. So I was an active duty Army nurse, and I did a tour. Life-changing in a very, very positive way. But more than that, guys, is we started several other businesses. a food delivery company. We launched a t-shirt business, all kinds of other things. So to say that I was bit by the entrepreneurial bug is an understatement. Not all of those were successful. Some of them were really big, some of them weren't. Some of them were for fun, a hobby. But the point is, guys, is that we just decided to just take an action, to do it, to just jump in and do it, even if, well, imagine this. The day before I became a nurse, I didn't know how to be a nurse. So if the cannabis industry sounds daunting or I don't get it, then that's okay. There's always a learning curve. But fast forward. So we sold our company, and after the sale, we took a little bit of time off. My wife and I rediscovered each other, if you will, did some traveling, but I really fell in love with mentoring and advising, and we angel invested in some startups. Still nothing in the cannabis industry though. Several years ago, a good friend of mine called, and he's a Marine, and he's a good buddy to this day, and he did several tours in Iraq. He is now an engineer for a very large multinational company, and he said, Rick, I need help starting my business. And I love the art of the start. I just love the art of the start and helping early stage CEOs or founders craft a vision of where they want to go and what they want to create and how they want to change the world. And so I said, who do you want to help? And he said, Rick, I want to help veterans with PTSD or PTS. And as a veteran, as an American, just as a human being, I thought that's a great mission. And I said, I'm in. And so I asked him the next logical question, guys, is how are you going to do that? And he said 3 letters that changed my life. He said CBD. I had no idea what that was. Like, full transparency, guys, I have no idea what that was. I was raised, and I was born in California. My family is very conservative. I was always taught and told that anything green, it's the devil's lettuce, stay away, it's bad for you, you're gonna go to jail, Ricky, it's this. And so that's how I was raised. And again, when he said CBD, I'm like, I don't know what that is. And I said, so I probably should look it up. Either way, guys, I looked up obviously what CBD was and realized it was part of this massive green ecosystem around the cannabis plant. So I'm really distilling this, guys, on a high level, but I realized that CBD was a component of cannabis and was part of marijuana. And I had this inflection point. I had this moment where I really had to stop. I had to stop and think, do I really want to partake or jump into an industry that I had been told and taught and led to believe was wrong? It was a big question, guys, and maybe you have the same question. I don't know that. But there was, for me, the way I was raised, there was nothing good about the industry. But on the flip side is it's helping people, especially our vets with PTSD and anybody else with PTSD. So I made a conscious decision first to learn as much as I could, to empty my cup of everything I thought I knew about cannabis and really just start from scratch. And it was quite an experience. When I opened up my proverbial Rolodex, and you all have a Rolodex, you have names on your phone that you've collected for maybe years, I realized that I had friends who grew hemp. I had friends who owned dispensaries in Las Vegas, and I had friends who were farmers or in the agriculture industry who were growing marijuana. I just never knew what they did because I never had to pay attention until the day I had to pay attention. Make sense? Guys, I don't intentionally try to drop these little nuggets, but all of these little things matter. They matter, you see, because the people who were part of my past suddenly became very necessary for my current and future. So I looked them up. I went out to Vegas. I went to Nevada and went to the marijuana dispensaries and learned how they process their cash and how they hire and fire and where they grow their stuff. And I am not an expert in how to grow or create a better yield, or I'm not a farmer. What I am is I'm a purebred entrepreneur, and what I do best is teach you, is show you, is uncover how to really grow a sustainable, ethical, responsible cannabis business. But I went to their farms, I went to their grow operations, I went to the dispensaries, I learned a lot about the industry. I traveled to not only Nevada, but California and Washington State, and I really just took a deep dive, no holds barred. Here's my reason why. Because I figured if I could learn a lot about the marijuana side of the industry that's highly regulated, and we're going to talk more about that as this podcast unfolds, regulatory issues, compliance issues, legal, finance, money, you name it, employment, I figured if I could learn how they work the hardest part of a controversial industry, then understanding CBD, which is, as we talk, 50 state legal, would be easier. And to an extent, that's true. So here's what I learned. I learned that I really, really wanted to be a part of this green rush. I learned that there's a lot of wealth that's going to be created in this industry. I learned that there's a lot of people who are jumping into this industry without knowing what the heck they're doing. Honestly, guys, and they're failing just as fast. And what I also learned is that with this plant, we can change a whole lot of lives. We can shift economies. We can change minds like mine. Guys, remember, I'm the anti-cannabis turned not only consumer, but the go-to expert for a lot of people around the country. I told you I was going to be real and raw, guys. It even got to the point where here I am sitting talking to you and I'm wearing a t-shirt that has THC in the middle of it. 5 years ago, I would have never imagined wearing a t-shirt like this anywhere, let alone in public. But guys, that's kind of the story. So kind of full circle, I became a co-founder of a CBD company. From there, my wife and I learned about the wholesale distribution piece, how to build e-commerce sites, the whole even merchant process, and we navigated that. We made connections. We learned who the good ones are and the bad ones are, guys. And that's not to point fingers, but the fact is, in any industry, there's always the good ones and there's the bad ones. We learned where the good ones are and how to sniff them out and how to align with them and how to create things with them. We learned a lot about the industry, folks, but what I'm really getting to is that there's no magic to it. It's just hitting fundamental. It's understanding certain nuances of business. And that's really what Weed to Know Basis is about. I'm not going to teach you how to grow a better crop. That's not what I do. I'm not going to talk about the best fertilizers. I'm not going to talk about who has the best hair or the best strain. That's not what I do. What we do here on Weed to Know Basis is we teach you in an authentic, or we show you and talk to you about in an authentic and real and transparent and honest and raw way how you too can be a part of this green rush, even if you just want to be a consumer. Guys, the world is changing. As we speak, about 2/3 of the US population are pro-cannabis. Think about that. Think about what that could mean to you. Maybe with something you're suffering from. Maybe as an entrepreneur. Maybe as a creator. Maybe you are currently needing a solution to something that's been bugging you. Weed to Know Basis, our mission is to tackle all that and to deconstruct it in such a way that makes sense to an 8-year-old and to grandma. All the way back to my nursing days. As an ER trauma nurse, guys, one of the things I learned very rapidly was I had to be able to, as a healthcare provider, help somebody who was suffering or who had questions understand a very complex issue as if they were 5 years old or a grandma. So what I learned is that if I can explain it to a 5-year-old or my grandma, then I can explain it to you. And that's what we're going to do. Weed to Know Basis, guys. This is episode 1. My name is Rick. I'm a registered nurse. We are here to impact the world in a positive way around one of the fastest, coolest, biggest, most awesome industries the world has ever seen. You owe it to yourself at least to pay attention. Stay tuned, guys. Weed to Know Basis is coming at you. Episode 1. We're signing off. Peace.